Next, we will have a look at the configuration of our DMS connector for DocuWare to see how we can accomplish the behavior we have just seen. First, I go here to Modules, choose DMS connector, and then go to Documents. This is where you configure all the documents you want to be processed by our connector. To show how this works, I just add a new document, let's say the sales invoice. I enter the name here, sales invoice. I can give it a description, we leave that blank for now, and I choose the document type here, customer invoice. And as soon as I save, you can see the reference table, our cust invoice, sure, will be updated here. Next, I choose the archive type. We have three options here. Automatic synchronous. That means that the document will be processed as soon as we have posted our document. Automatic batch means that there will an posting queue entry be written, and you can process the archiving later within a job batch, for example. And the last option is show dialog. So a dialog will be shown to you when you posted the document where you can choose if you want to go batch or synchronous. I choose synchronous for now. That should be fine. In the next field mask, we have a drop down where we can see every file cabinet we have in our DocuWare system. We simply select the file cabinet we want our sales invoices to be archived in, which of course is sales invoice. And at the field file name, we then specify the name of the file of our PDF that is generated by D365. We have the option to add a placeholder here. If I press this button, you can see every field on our reference table. So for the document name, I will choose the invoice number, which I can find here. Simply select it, press OK, and you can see our invoice number will be our file name later. I can give it a little test, so that would be our file name. The next step is to configure our field mapping. Here we tell the connector the relation between the fields in our reference table and the fields in our file cabinet. I just add a mapping here. At mask field, I have a list of all the fields available in our file cabinet. I start with the customer number, and the corresponding field in our cust invoice sure is the order account. I go on with the invoice number. Here the referenced field is the invoice ID. I can type it in. So, and the last field is the sales order number, which is the sales ID. Now the configuration is complete. If I will post a sales invoice now, the connector will automatically archive it. So let's give it a test. I go to all sales orders, choose a sales order that has not been invoiced yet. So let's say this one. Go to invoice, say create invoice, click OK once more, so our invoice will be posted. Now that our invoice is posted, we can go to DMS queries, and we see that the button for the sales invoice is missing. This is because we haven't configured a query yet. Let's do this very quick. We go to modules, go to DMS connector, and go to queries. We have queries for the sales confirmation and a purchase invoice, as you can see, and we now add a new one for our sales invoice. Pick the sales invoice in the reference document field and add the reference table. So the reference table is the table our query is based on. This is not, in that case, the cust invoice, sure. Well, it could be, but in our case, because we want to query in the sales orders overview, it is the sales table. I type in sales table, and then I do the same as I did before in the document configuration. I just do a little field mapping. So let's say we query based on the mask field sales order number. And the field name for that in our sales table is, of course, the sales ID. save that. And what the DMS connector now does is if I pick a sales order and click the button Sales Invoice to show me the documents, it will then create a query to DocuWare, which then says show all documents that have the sales ID of our sales table record in their indexing field sales order number. Now, if I go to the sales orders, pick the sales order we just invoiced and go to DMS queries, you can see the sales invoice button. If I press it, we see our sales invoice we just posted. One thing I didn't mention yet, because the DMS connector already did that automatically for us, is the user interface integration. So the buttons we had to query our documents. If we go to the customer overview, for example, you see there is no DMS query tab. To configure that tab, we just add another query for the cust table, because that is the base table of our customer overview. And as you can see, I already did that here. And for the integration, we go to DMS connector, use interface integration, and here we can see a list of all the forms we already included the DMS connector. Now just add a new one. So the form name for our customer overview is cust table. The data source is the cust table 2. The action pane we want to be the button in is our action pane header, and the tab we choose DMS queries, so all the queries have their own tab. If I save this now and then go to the customer overview, you can see there's our DMS query tab. Let's choose that, choose the customer we did the invoice for, and query the sales invoice. And as you can see, now we have all invoices for the customer.